Hello, all of you beautiful beings of light. It's so wonderful to see you here again today. I know it's been a while since I've recorded a show, and I just follow Spirit's guidance. When Spirit says to jump and have a conversation with someone, I do, and when I feel guided to explain what's going on in my spiritual realm, I do that as well. So I got the guidance a few weeks ago to interview this next guest, and we've been able to work it out. So I'm so excited to have her with us today. This is Dr. Nancy Wiley, and she and I are going to be talking about trusting source. This is a really, really important conversation. Dr. Wiley has been fascinated pretty much all of her life with manifestation and consciousness. She's actually a scientist who has experienced a spiritual awakening. And I love bridging science with spirituality. For me, I've been saying for years, I think science is closer to spirituality than religion is, because science is so much more open-minded and open to continually evolving in understanding, where religion is pretty much stuck in its own way. So I'm going to bring Dr. Nancy in, and let's see where this conversation goes. Hello, it is so wonderful to have you here, and I just have a feeling this is going to be an amazing conversation for this audience who is what I prefer to think of a little bit more awake and aware than others, because this particular audience bridges both being aware of the corruption that's happening on the planet and spiritual awakening. So as I've mentioned before in some of my previous episodes, there are some people who are aware of the corruption, but they're not spiritually awake. And there are a lot of people who are spiritually awake and not aware of the corruption. So this show really is dedicated to being fearless and free and to bridging the divide so that we all come together in unity and we're no longer divided against each other. So you and I were talking off camera a little bit about that, and I'm so happy to hear that you are in alignment with this as well. So tell me a little bit about you, how you came to be, there was something that happened to you when you were 12 years old, if you want to share a little bit about that, and
Sure.
this path that you've been on.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you, Victoria. Your show is great. And yes, we are just two like-minded souls. Like when I heard what you were saying and watching your shows, I'm like, oh my gosh, this lady speaks my language. Or somehow, I mean, certain times, like we get messages, intuitions, and we like negate them. No, that's not real. That can't possibly, that's just my imagination. But the more we develop our inner life, the more we're like, no, that was very real. And so as a scientist, for people who are, not quite believers, or they want to believe, but they can't really bridge the gap, I have 6 advanced degrees, 3 from Columbia University, or certificates. So orthodontics is a certificate, but it's still a 2-year program at Columbia. Anyways, 6. Science isn't the way. So what I want to talk about is, number one, we 98% of us function, and that's through using our navigation through our left brain, which is our mind. That's what we're trained to. That's what we're taught for. That's what we're rewarded for. That's what science certainly taught me. And you have this whole other side. Luckily, I started meditating when I was 16, 17, something. I got great books, Dr. Joseph Murphy, The Power of the Subconscious Mind, when I was 16, and Autobiography of a Yogi, really like blow your mind. So, it caused both sides of my brain to be developed. And so it used to be the mind dictated most of my decisions. And then I started switching at some point to my consciousness. And now I'm working to marry the two, another unifying theme, how they work together. Like once you see a unity consciousness where you are everything and nothing, you don't have a body, but you can see all around, you can see everywhere forever and ever. And yet you have no body. You're everything but nothing all at once. Once you see that, and you come out of that meditation, it changes you forever. It's like an egg being boiled. It's now hard boiled. It'll never go back to the way it was, but it leaves a little bit of like unsteadiness, uncertainness until you can go hone into your relationship with the divine. So I found this great teacher about 2008. Her name is Jetta Molly. I mean, she's just the best. So I tried transcendental meditation, which is the mantra. I tried holosync brain wave entrainment for 8 years. So TM for 20, 25. Brainwave entrainment for 8. And then I found Jetta about 12 or 13 years ago. From the very first meditation with her, I knew she was very different because she guided you to source, and she gave the mind a job to do different things, guided meditations. So you were able to get in there sneakily. And finally, after a while, it's like, that's my way of being. And I surrender to this energy. Divine trust is knowing this energy, relying on it, knowing it, communing with it, having a one-on-one look into the face of God. And it looks back at you and you realize you're the same. You're the same. And then, so much, I could go on and on. I hope I answered your question.
So what happened when you were 12?
Oh,
that started you on this path?
Oh, that's a really great question. So for me, when I was 4 years old, my brother had a friend who rode through our yard on a horse. And I was 4 and I saw the horse. I fell in love. I'm like, I have this unexplainable love for horses. Unexplainable. Like that would be, I never played with dolls, only horses. Then I started riding when I was 4, and I'm so passionate, but horses are a lot of money. My parents had 4 children. They couldn't afford it. And my mom said, you can't really ride. You can ride once in a while. We can't afford a horse. So I wanted a horse. And I dreamed of a horse running beside me for years. I just saw it like if a car, I jumped, my horse was running alongside of me. When I'm 12 years old, I started going when I was 11 to see it. I lived in Maryland at the time, and they had a big hunt where it's a fake hunt for foxes, but they just gallop across the countryside and jump fences, and it looks like a whole lot of fun. Well, I wasn't invited to go into the hunt, but I was invited to see them off 2 years in a row. And my mom was working with a lady who was an English teacher who was from one of those very wealthy families. And I got invited 2 years in a row to see the hunt off. On the second one, I met her whole family, and her mom had breast cancer. She was no longer riding, and she gave me her horse. He was so beautiful. He was, oh my God, he was Palomino thoroughbred cross. Oh, he was so perfect. And I had him for like 6 years. He was older, but it was still so amazing. And I realized, holy cow, how many people are given a horse? No one that I know or have ever heard of, really, except in National Velvet, a movie. So I realized there's something to it. Did I create that? And then I got Dr. Joseph Murphy's book when I was 16. Said, yeah, you probably created it. And kind of how about it? So still amazing.
Yeah. But the reason that you created it is because you didn't have any doubt. You just stated what you wanted. There was no doubt. There was no, because kids don't really have that. You stated what you wanted.
Yeah, my desire.
I'm saying, but you didn't feed the stuff into it that a lot of adults do.
Yeah.
Your parents' money issues didn't get fed into it. It was more that it was their beliefs.
Yeah,
they were your beliefs.
I know that
not at that age. Usually, it takes a little bit longer for parents' beliefs to become anchored.
My mom told me when I was maybe 5 that I better become a doctor so that I could afford horses, because horses were very expensive.
So that's why you became a doctor.
Yes, that's exactly why. I wanted to be a horse trainer. That's what I wanted when I was 5. And my mom.
You see what I'm saying? That your desire.
Yes.
Is actually what created it.
Yes.
Not that the doubt didn't stand in the way. Where a lot of times what happens is with a lot of people is that their doubt stands in the way of their desire. The doubt is actually stronger than the desire for what it is they want.
Mm-hmm.
The disbelief is stronger than the desire. But at 12, your desire was stronger than anything else. That's why you were able to manifest it.
Yes, or it wouldn't have been manifested. You're absolutely right. Yes, I totally agree with you.
So then what happened? What is it that caused you to go from being a scientist, the logical reasoning part, to where you are now? Is there something that happened that, did you have like an awakening experience?
Yes, many little ones along the way. Like a lot of people say they had, I had little ones. So we were talking a little bit. I was raised in the Catholic religion. I went to Catholic school until I was 4th grade. And then I did go to a public school, but still went to church every day until I went away to college. But listen to this. I took a sociology of religion in college, and they prove that religion is only there to control the masses. And they prove it over and over again. And kind of, I was a sophomore in college, and it was like pulling the rug out from under my feet. For here I was spoon-fed this all along in the religious, in the Catholic religion. And then to say, no, there's no God, and then prove over and over and over again in all kinds of religions through across the whole planet, across all of time and history, human history. That was like, oh my God, I was walking without a ground underneath me. So now fast forward to, I'm in dental school. So I went to Columbia, where the medical and the dental go together. So I'm in my 3rd year. We go together for 3 years and then we separate completely. But I was in the 3rd year, and we're in this huge amphitheater. There might've been 250 of us. And there was a professor way down in the bottom. I was sitting way up high in the back. I don't know why I was all the way in the back, because usually I try to get in the front, but all the way in the back. And he is talking to us about leukocytes, lymphocytes, T killer cells, and all the different ways the immune response is to a bacteria and a virus. And all of a sudden, I got smacked with something, and it was like a bolt of lightning. I say it was a flash of light in my book, where I knew there was a God or a creative source that was so powerful that made this miraculous human being. I mean, it was just one process of the human being, which is just so amazing. So that was the beginning of like this whole thing. Like, yes, there is absolutely a God. So then I became even more of a seeker. I've been looking the whole time, meditating this whole time. So then I looked at different teachers. I've read maybe 1,000 books or studied with 1,000 different teachers or books, classes, whatever. So I have all this information in my mind, spiritual. Okay. Any spare moment, instead of studying science after a certain point, was all a spiritual quest, because I'd had this flash of light. So I became a Reiki master, so many different things. I mean, I could go on and on. Like I saw my mom, she had a tumor the size of a grapefruit in her left breast. And at this point, I was in my orthodontic residency, still at Columbia. And she told me, she didn't want to tell me, but she was going to have surgery. So I came home. She goes, let's go to a Catholic church ceremony in the foothills of Maryland at sunset on Friday before her surgery on Monday. So we're there. So beautiful. Oh my gosh, the sun was setting. It was almost all windows. It was a very small chapel-like thing. And at the end of the Mass, the priest said, anyone who would like to try laying on of the hands can come up and I'll do it. So my mom said, come with me, stand in line. I want to do it. So we waited in line. There were a few people in front of her. Finally, it was her turn. And the priest said, what's your malady? She told him. He took his hands like this. He held her head for about 10 to 12 minutes. When he was done, he said, you're healed. She could feel his hands warm and everything. So Monday, my father and I are waiting in the reception area, and the surgeon comes out and talks to us. He goes, well, I have good news and bad news. When we removed the breast, we've sent it to histology. We could find no histological trace of the tumor whatsoever. But we did find lymph-positive nodes, which we removed on the same sides, which meant she would have stage 3 cancer, not stage 4. But they couldn't find the tumor because of the laying of the hands 2 days later.
Wow.
So I do stuff like that all the time. I mean, that's like the norm. So we studied further and we saw it was very similar to what Jesus does, or, Reiki. And at the time, Dr. Oz was at Columbia doing research for his cardiac patients, his surgical patients. And he had a group of controls and a group that got Reiki. And he found the ones that got Reiki healed at 50 to 75% faster with less side effects or any issues than the control group. So we decided we would go and get our Reiki masters. So we became Reiki masters together after that. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And there's one really other powerful, powerful story, which I'm feeling guided to say because it's all about divine trust. So I'm an orthodontist working on the border of Parkland and Coral Springs. My mom just had passed. We had our funeral on Friday. And the following week, I worked all week. And Wednesday, I'm on my clinic floor. And a mom exclaims, "There's an active shooter at Douglas." Well, that was the active shooter, Nicholas Cruz, that, murdered 17 people and wounded another 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland. So we breathed in, and then we heard sirens and helicopters, and we were getting reports from patients, and we just had to stop working. We decided to go home early, and we could barely get home because all of the parents were trying to get to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, which is 1.5 miles from my office, and they all created gridlock. So they all pulled alongside of this very busy street and just abandoned their cars and walked the rest of the way. So the next day we found out I lost a patient, and one of my staff lost her sister, and everybody was in shock. It was just a horrendous scene. People stopped coming to the office for about 6 weeks because they were just in shock and post-traumatic stress. When they did start coming back, I want to tell you, there was a vacancy in their eyes. I knew they were stressed. And one of my patients at the time, an adult psychologist, said, "Watch, they're going to start committing suicide." I'm like, "Why? I don't understand that." He said either survivor's guilt or severe anxiety. That's just what happens. So I realized, I was, for about 5 days, I was really out of sorts, and I went deep into meditation. By this time, my go-to home isn't love or gratitude. I mean, I love those, but it's trust. Trust just takes me home every time, no matter what is causing me to be out of whack or sorts. It just takes me right home, right straight to my source, and I can commune, and it just smooths and soothes and completely aligns everything in me. So I go deep into meditation because I realize I'm suffering too. It's like on the 5th day. So it was a really long meditation, maybe two hours. My answer is, why did this happen? There's no hair ever out of place. Do you think I could let anything ever bad happen? Everything that happens is for a reason to grow us. Those souls gave their life to evolve us further. They knew that. They made the concerted effort to come in and give their life in this way for all of humanity. And it goes more into it. But then I came out and I realized I no longer suffer, no matter what happens. Anything bad, all I have to do is even think trust. And even in a awake state, I don't have to go into deep meditation anymore. And I completely become aligned. So I realized I don't suffer. And what a gift if I could give it to them. So through the next 2 years, kids started committing suicide, but they kept it, shh, we're not going to say anything. But they started having town halls, and I found out about them. So I went to see what I could do. You can't do anything. You're an orthodontist. It's out of your wheelhouse. And I'm like, heck yeah, I can. I can, and I'm going to find a way. So right when this all happened, when my mom died, and just in January, right before the shooting was February 14th, 2018, my back started giving me severe problems. I just, you just like push it under the rug and keep going, and you're stoic. And so it kept getting worse. And I finally gave in and had MRIs, and I found out I have 17 herniated, bulging discs and 4 frank herniations, and one where the severe pain is. So I realized when all that bending over patients was not good for me, I said, you know what? This is good for me. I don't know why. If this didn't happen, I wouldn't be pushed out. I know there's some big purpose for me because of my divine trust. Every step I take, divine trust, I trust. So I'm like, okay, I don't know why, but I'm going to listen to it. So I sold my practice in the middle of COVID. I had it up for sale before, and then had a deal, and COVID hit and got taken out. But I divine trust. I take this, and I walk it every step of the way. So the deal miraculously happened in the middle of COVID. So I sold it, and my last day was in November of 2020. So had no means, physical, financial means whatsoever. I take a step. All I see is I'm going to take a step and another step, and I'm going to trust and live this. So I decide with the proceeds of the sale, I was going to rent a beach house and give myself a month to just recover and relax through this horrendous COVID and sale and all of this. And I timed my first day in this condo. It's a 2-bedroom condo on the beach in New Smyrna Beach, beautiful place, with a spiritual retreat with another group I'm in called Your Year of Miracles. And my first day is my intention for that 4-day spiritual retreat, which was the beginning of the month, of this whole month at the beach, was I'm open to my next divine assignment. Show me what it is. So first day of the retreat, we're in a spiritual type of meditation or process. And I hear, you're going to write a book on trust. And I'm like, my next divine assignment, I'm a scientist. Writing's my weakest point. How could you give it to me? You're going to write a book on trust. Okay, so I argue with it, right? All day and all night. The next day, there's another process, deep into meditation. And I hear, you're going to write a book on trust. You know you embody it. This is why you're here. This is why you've traveled all this spiritual path, because you're going to help so many people with this message. So I didn't argue. Day 3, heard nothing. I'm like, I'm still trusting. I still heard it, but this time I stopped arguing with it. Day 4, another process. Okay, now you're open. You can hear us. You're going to write this book. Get up. Here's the outline. Right, they outlined my whole book. It was just so amazing. And I wrote it down. Then the day after that, my dad got sick. And you will not believe this. I was in a place 3.5 hours north of where I live. My dad got sick, and he was in a hospital 8 minutes from that condo. So I got to spend all that whole month with him. I mean, you might think, oh, well, that's kind of, a spiritual retreat became this life, end of life giving care, but it was so profound and beautiful. I got to spend the best time of my life with my dad before he died a month later, right at the end of the actual retreat and the spiritual month at the ocean. He died on the very last day, and which is the day I wrote the book. I started writing the book.
Wow. So now you're an author.
Yes. Oh, no, uncanny.
Are you still, you're not an orthodontist anymore?
No, I had my back. That's
right.
Here, so I cannot do it.
So what are you doing now?
I'm doing this. I'm trying to get this out. I'm actually volunteering to help the Parkland students. I'm going to volunteer time 1 day a week to help them, because they're still suffering. So many are suffering, and they just need help. They're not getting anything that gets to the root of the cause, like this: trusting the divine. This book explains why everything in life happens, pretty much. It explains who we are, why we're here. It explains that I'm no different than anyone else, and the knowledge I carry, they can carry. if they want to, if they open their hearts and they become, allowing and willing. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm teaching this. And I had another download for my second book a few weeks ago. And that's how it comes, like boom. And if I don't sit down and write it down, it's gone. That's the way this energy works through me.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. So
isn't it funny how it works that way? It was like once you turn on the tap, you can't turn it off. I'm always writing. It's like, oh, here it goes. Here comes another flood, and you just have to write it down. And it's interesting. After I wrote my first book, somebody asked me if you were stranded on an island, what would you want to have? I'm like, notebook and pen. Because once it starts to flow, it just does. And kind of like where you are now, when I wrote my first book, somebody said, oh, you have at least a dozen books in you. And I thought they were crazy. I'm like, no, I got one. I'm working on the one. And now I've written one that's in editing. I have another one that's in editing.
Wow.
I have the 4 that I've published. I have a 10-year anniversary edition of my first one that's with a publisher. And I have another one that's up here.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like you, once it starts to flow, it's just flowing. There's not enough time in my day for all the writing that wants to come through me.
Don't you kind of get like a vibration? Oh, something's coming through. Better get a pen. Do you ever get that?
It's in the most inconvenient times. Like it was coming in the shower today. I'm like, okay, can you guys remind me when I actually have a notebook in front of me what it is that's coming through? Because this is really good stuff. I don't have anything. I need like a waterproof cell phone to be able to record the stuff.
I get a lot of, oh my gosh, in the shower and at like 3 a.m. 3 a.m. Like when
great stuff comes in the middle of the night.
Yes. 3 a.m. I get such juice and beautiful. Sometimes the information, oftentimes I would love to talk to this about your readers. It's just so profound and beautiful that I'm overcome with such exquisite bliss that tears come to my eyes. It's like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And it's tears of joy and bliss and beauty and gratitude and just so many emotions all rolled in one. I know I'm speaking your language.
Well, yeah, and I'll lay there sometimes and be in that, and it's like, oh, this is good. And I'm trying to roll over and write it down. Yeah. And so I just set these intentions of when I need to remember this again, that I will remember it. Yeah, or even to grab my phone, right, and record it into it.
Yes, yeah. This is just even in the middle of the night. You just have to push one button and start recording, and you're good. You don't have to turn the lights on.
Oh, that's a good idea. I haven't used a recorder in forever. It's so funny. I was someplace a few years ago and I had a recorder with me, and the lady that was with me said, what is that? And I said, it's a recorder. She says, oh, I didn't even know they made those anymore. So, but I do have just the little recording option on my cell phone. Sometimes I just need to remember to hit it. Even if I were half asleep, that would be a good idea. I don't. I just set the intention that I will remember it when I need to.
I have a question for you. Do you ever just feel like it's just writing? Oh my God, it's just taken over. It's writing.
All the time. Yeah, all the time. And then I go back later and read it. Because I don't know. It's just flowing through. Like it comes in, and it comes out my fingers through my pen. That's why I still write in a notebook, because I write. It just, the creative process is different when you're actually doing the writing, because it literally just flows in and then out my fingers. And then I'll go back later and read it. And, wow, this is really good. That I'm not the one that's in control of the pen. It's just spirit speaking through me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And I do that a lot when I'm teaching too, because I actually get into this zone. And I don't even know what it is I'm saying. And people will say to me, can you repeat that? I'm like, actually, no, I can't.
I don't know. Yes, I know. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. I mean, yes, that happens to me too. Like I have to record it, because same with you, if you're not recording it, you could lose the precious information that's coming through. So I like to have a recorder, because I'm like, dang, that was so good, but I didn't record it.
Yeah.
remember, because it wasn't really, it's just, I'm a vehicle for this information that comes through, a willing vehicle. And it's my life is magical. So I want to talk to you about this. So I have processes. I imagine you have processes, and I think this is so helpful. And I think I heard you talking about this in one of your classes. But we have to be worthy. We have to love ourselves enough to allow this to come through. So
Right.
that's the first thing I do in the morning is I do a self-love process. And I don't move on to my second process before my eyes are closed. I haven't even really fully awakened. I just love myself until I feel expansion in all dimensions. And then I go into the present moment and merge with the divine, with my trust, in my connection. And I let it use my eyes, my brain, my thoughts, my speech, I fill all my chakras up with this divine light, then my whole body, then my hands, and I let it express through my hands and my feet. It feels so, it works, this divine or divinity works through me, and it uses my vehicle to live and to realize its divinity, its holiness. And it's so profound and beautiful. So therefore, I'm the vehicle. I'm getting out of the way of this beautiful energy that operates through me, that works through me, that is bringing this knowledge that's so needed to the planet, just as you are. I know, I listen to you. I feel you. I just know the same thing about you. But that self-love and then surrendering to this energy. So now things happen. All I have to do is say, I have this idea. Can you give me a sign? And then I say 1111. Or I take the dog out and I see an osprey fly over and call out. Or the other day, I went to the bank and I see something going across the road in front of me. What is that? It was an alligator. Do you know what a holy representative that is, and how rare that is to see an alligator cross your path? So rare. So I start like, what does that mean? I know it's something, but if you don't take, it's a sign. It's a sign. But if you don't take a moment to realize it and recognize it, and then try to, discern the message and the meaning. Wow. And then when I saw on there, I usually use Animal Speaks as my book, but I decided to go online, and what I saw on there was just so miraculous and profound. Like, yes, your message, this is a huge confirmation message from spirit, universe, whatever name you give it, that you're on the right path to keep going. They're giving you evidence. It's more than evidence. It's that the universe is going to reward you for you bringing these messages out, because I still have no visible means of income.
Right. But you trust the divine.
Yes.
Yes. So what's interesting, as you were saying about the animals in your path, I've been saying for years that synchronicity is the magic of the universe. So the universe is always trying to place these synchronicity events in our path. We just need to recognize them. Absolutely. How often does synchronicity happen and people don't even recognize it because they're not even looking for it? And it's there all the time.
I know.
The signposts are always there. The people that you meet, the resources, it's all there, and it's all being placed in your path all the time. One thing that I wanted to share with you as you were speaking about working with the students, that PTSD is not being approached correctly. Not that it's incorrect, but what they're not doing is they're not recognizing it as a spiritual trauma. That these kids need to be worked with on a spiritual level. That's why they're not processing the trauma. They're still stuck in this trauma because it's a spiritual trauma. And traditional therapy does not work. It only works with the mental part. It doesn't work with the spiritual part. And what's missing for these kids is the spiritual, that connection to spirit that explains to them why these things happen, and how how even our greatest suffering, actually everything is always working for us.
Yes.
How can we explain to these kids, how is this for us? And how some, as you were saying, some people volunteer to play those roles.
Yes. Yes.
One of the things that really was profound for me was asking how to see Hitler through the eyes of love.
That's in my book.
Explain this one to me.
Mm-hmm.
And what came through was, imagine the soul that volunteered to play that role.
Yes, exactly what I got.
That's a big role for a soul to choose to play.
Yes. And like, I mean, we think we come out thinking like he was the villain, but on that okay, I'm going to explain the way Dr. Sue
On a soul level. Yeah.
We come in, we're up there planning what we're going to do, how we're going to grow and expand all of humanity, right? Not just ourselves, it's all of humanity. So
it's never about just us.
Right. So we say, okay, I want to learn forgiveness, or I want to learn self-love or worthiness. Okay, I'll be the bad guy this time. Okay, yeah, let's go. Boom. And then they come in and you realize that was in a book I read, Embraced by the Light, like 20 years ago. And I mean, although I read the words, it still didn't process until like certain things happen in my life that I had to question myself. Like, well, why did that happen? And I mean, it's a personal story, but it really does bring to point, like, let's look and see how this works. But yes, Dr. Sue Morter says we go to the bus stop before we come incarnate, and we ask the people, what are you in for? I'm in for self-love. I want to learn how to love, and I want to learn to forgive. Okay, let's go in, and I'll be the person who teaches you. I caused a traffic accident, and I kill your mom and your daughter in a car accident because I'm a drunk driver, and I'm going to teach you forgiveness. Okay, let's go. And then boom, we experience, we live it out, and we don't really realize it until we get to, up there again, and we say, oh yeah, that was so profound. Or do we? Maybe we do now. We're starting to wake up to understand this process. You understand it. I understand it. Dr. Morter understands it. We all are here to wake up and expand all, not just ourselves, but all. We're one. So we're expanding our individual. I say it's like a wave in the ocean, and then it crashes, it goes back in. So we're here to expand that wave and the whole ocean on top of that.
That's right.
That's the whole reason for it. And here's something too, I'm going to ask you about this. I'm getting the bigger the core wound or the problem, a la Nicholas Cruz killing all those people, the bigger the spirit is that's left to recover, forgive, and evolve out of that, and make that an opportunity to evolve rather than a negative thing our mind puts on it and brings us down. It's meant to give us an opportunity to expand, to forgive, to move on, to evolve out of there, to realize, to wake up to who we are. That is one of every human's missions. It's in their heart. They know it. They're calling all your listeners. That thing in their heart is calling to every single. We all have that. Now we do also, it seems, have like a sub calling where we're supposed to do it. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be a teacher. I'm supposed to be a guide or a teacher. At this point, I thought I was supposed to be an orthodontist and a scientist, but apparently not. This is here.
You were. So I call it having a life purpose and then a higher purpose if you're willing to accept it.
Yeah.
So your life purpose was to be the orthodontist. Your higher purpose now is to be a healer and a teacher.
Yes. So.
And then I think what you're trying to explain is that we all have basically the same purpose, which is to remember who we are.
To remember the divinity that we are God incarnate. And God couldn't experience itself. So, I mean, I go all full science thing, right? God, there was one energy, all things everywhere, but it couldn't experience itself. And when I go into that energy, it was It wanted to know itself. It wanted to experience itself, but it couldn't. And I've heard other teachers say it agonized. It agonized because it couldn't experience itself. So it caused the Big Bang, which caused expansion and contraction in some areas. So that's why we get the planets, planet Earth, and humanity. And then it caused human beings the ability, maybe other animals too, we're not sure, like the dolphins and the whales, but it caused humanity to have enough awareness to know that it was it. And that's the wake up. That's what it wants to. That is so fulfilling to source energy, is when a human being wakes up to what I'm saying right here. Is so thrilling to them, that energy. It loves it. It's one of the purposes to wake up to that divinity. Can you imagine where humanity would be if we all knew we were divine walking beings?
I do it all the time. All the time. I'm like, if people actually understood that we are all God incarnate.
Yes.
Right? That what we're really capable of when we remember who we are, that we are divine love having a human experience. And that when we get that, oh my gosh, like you walk through life in a perpetual state of bliss. And I really think that's where humanity is going. And enough people are starting to grasp that.
Well,
that what this planet has the ability to be when enough of us wake up to that. And that's the ultimate challenge, right? That's why we incarnate. We incarnate because we as streams of consciousness want to have that challenge of, can I go down there into all that fear and all of that darkness and remember who I am? And then once you do, it's like, oh, okay, that's when it gets good.
Yes.
And that's when you start to, again, that's when the life purpose is what it was. We become this next version of ourselves, which is like the caterpillar emerging into the butterfly, right? We become this higher version of ourselves, still in human form, but we can't go back to being what we were before. It's too small. It's too limiting. This suddenly we realize that we are all that.
Yes. Yes, Victoria.
And then this desire for us then to, it's like wishing everybody could understand what that feels like.
Yes. And through pain, I think the pain point is for me is the actual irritant that pushes you out of it, right? That makes you look for the antidote, find it, or study it, find it, and then help others. So then your light comes on and helps other people get their light on. And then
that's right.
Across
and that's why I was asking you if you had a wake-up experience, because for most people, it is something like that. It's a painful experience that brings them to their knees and then cracks them open, and then suddenly they can see what they couldn't see before. But we're so busy in our everyday lives just going about life, being and doing what we've always done, that sometimes it takes that the spiritual 2x4 in the back of the head, so to speak, to wake us up. And so a lot of times it is a very painful experience like that. And if we can teach these young people that this is actually a wake up, a spiritual awakening experience, then they don't have to go through that lesson over and over and over again until they get it midlife and they go, oh, okay. Because for most people, from what I've seen, it tends to be right around their midlife when they have that awakening experience of, oh my gosh, so now I'm in my 50s, I finally get how life works. What if we don't have to wait until we're in our 50s to figure out how life works? What if we're able to teach this to children?
Yes.
So they never experience that separation to begin with, and they don't have to go through the pain and suffering in order to remember who they are. They just know that innately, and because the way that the setup is presently is that first we're separated from the divine, and then we have to figure out how to reconnect to it, and then realize that we never actually were separated from it. We just believed that we were. What if we were to teach children that they're not separate. See, our religions teach children that they're separate from the divine. And that actually creates the separation. What if we never taught children they were separated to begin with? That every child innately understood through its entire life that it is the divine having a human experience.
That would be beautiful, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Oh,
We wouldn't have any of that suffering. We wouldn't have to go through the suffering to get back to God. We would just always be with it.
Yeah.
And it would always be with us.
Yes.
That's my dream.
Oh, Victoria, I think that would be beautiful. I think that's where we're heading. But right now we have so much suffering on the planet. Suicide rates are the highest, drug rates, drug overdose, alcoholism, crime, everything is like accelerating. We need voices. We need our voices to be heard.
Yeah. Well, that's why I started this show. I started getting the guidance a year ago that every person who has the ability to have a show needs to have one, so that this is what gets out into the airwaves. Even if people don't know that's what it is, it's going into the airwaves and it is feeding into the collective consciousness. So the more we do it, the more it actually uplifts the entire collective.
So I feel like I'm here on also a collective freeing for worthiness and lack. Those two things, like I see that in my ancestry and all around, the worthiness, the lack of worthiness.
Right.
And I feel like, well, is that mine, or is this, am I empathically picking it up? And I get both. It's both.
It's both. Yes, you have your own. And the what I call the hand-me-down beliefs from your family. You inherited a lot of those beliefs, and collectively there was a collective issue of unworthiness.
Yes.
And that's what we need to work through. I actually wrote a book about that too. Because it is such an issue. It is actually what I started seeing a few years ago is that unworthiness is one of the greatest plagues to the human experience. It is a disease. And that part of that story has been propagated over and over and over again to keep humanity from recognizing its full potential. Because there are some people who want to believe that they are the ones in control of the human experience. They don't want the other 99.99% to realize how amazing they are. And we, the people, are unifying with we're the ones we've been waiting for. They've been to this point, been considered in two different camps. And I think enough people are starting to wake up and realize, wait, we're actually not in two different camps. We're the ones we've been waiting for is a spiritual community. We, the people, are the religious community, if you will. I mean, that's what they've been saying, that the patriot, religious, conservative community, we, the people, they're no different. It's all the same people. We just need to realize that we are the ones we've been waiting for. And we've been saying that for years in the spiritual community. And I think people are finally starting to grasp it. It's going from here and really integrating into who we are as, oh, it actually is, we the people are the ones we've been waiting for. And if it is to be, it is up to we. And to be the change we want to see in the world, really own that and integrate that it's about who we are. And when enough of us anchor that into our individual consciousness, it feeds into the collective consciousness, because love is so much more powerful than fear. It will just transmute all those old unworthiness beliefs because they cannot exist in the presence of love.
Yes, the light of that conscious love. Mm-hmm. Consciousness. I say consciousness because consciousness to me is love. It is light. It's all knowing, it's truth, it's surety, it's safety, it's all of those.
Yeah. And the lack and unworthiness cannot exist in that consciousness. When enough of us own that and hold that in our like anchor that into the very being that we are, it's like waves, like we're saying about the wave in the ocean, right? It's that we are create a ripple by being that, And then by being that, the rest of humanity starts to pick it up, even if they don't even know where it's coming from. It just starts becoming their consciousness.
Like the 100th monkey.
Right.
Yeah. Should I explain that, or you think all your listeners know what?
No, go ahead and explain it, because that's actually, this is probably about the 5th or 6th time I've heard somebody refer to the 100th monkey in the last 2 weeks. So it's obviously something that people need to start talking about.
Okay, but you might know it better than me. It's some remote island off the coast of where Africa, the monkeys, one saw that by taking, what was it, a piece of fruit or something, and washing it, getting the sand off, washing it in the ocean, and could eat it, it would be much better and less sandy. So then another monkey saw it, another one. And then on the 100th monkey, the islands that weren't even connected, all the other monkeys started doing the same thing. So it shows that we're connected. I mean, there's been quantum physics experiments that have said that if, what happens here, it's all simultaneously. There's no time, there's no space. So, it happens exactly I gotta get my hands. So what happens here exactly the same time. There's no space or time that separates those two. So the monkeys on the one island that discovered it and taught everything on that island, enough of those consciousness of those monkeys spread to the other islands. I just think it's so great.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that Einstein was frustrated with, that he could never figure out how to quantify it, because he could see, it's like, well, if I have an idea here and somebody on completely other side of the planet has the same idea at the same time, there's got to be a way to quantify that. I think it's unified field theory, or
unified field theory and string theory.
And he was frustrated that he could never quantify that. And the fact is, it works. That's why we have got to stop focusing on the problems and focus on the solutions instead. We just keep creating the problems because that's what we're focusing on. If we're focusing on the solution, then the solutions will start to manifest.
So I look at it. Einstein was partially in his consciousness, but he was trying to explain unified field theory from his mind. You don't get there from your mind. You only can get there from your consciousness. And until you marry the two, you'll never have the answer. So it's ultimately the consciousness is the way to get to that unified field. That's the only way. The mind's a tool. It is a divine tool, to be sure, but it is not the way to get there. It's the consciousness. And if you go at it through the mind, you'll never get there. I would love to have talks with open-minded scientists and quantum physics. I'm saying, I've been to the unified field. I can tell you where it is, but you're not going to get it through your mind. It's only available through your consciousness.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they try to do. They're trying to be able to scientifically prove it. And right now, based on what we are capable of, what we know, because we don't know what we don't know, presently, it's impossible to quantify.
You think one day it'll be...
Consciousness is there all the time.
Yes.
Our consciousness is always in that. Now, for me, it's what I've been shown is that it's the 6th dimension. The 6th dimension is where that unified field is. And that we're all tapped into it all the time, all of us. But we actually can choose to tap into it better and to feed into it better, consciously rather than unconsciously, because we're all tapped into it unconsciously. What if we're able to consciously tap into that, feed into it, like we are with this conversation? This is a conscious conversation intended for the purpose of moving into that unified field so that everybody else across the planet can access this information. Yes. They don't even have to be watching this show. They are still getting that information. So sometimes I'm not going to have 3,000 followers, but you know what? It doesn't matter, because it's touching millions of people who don't even know they're being touched with it just by having the conversation. So more of us need to have more and more and more of these conversations until unity becomes the way of life, until love becomes the way of life. And the more of us, the guidance I got a year ago was that we need to be everywhere. so that when people turn on a TV, this is what they hear. When they turn on the internet, this is what they see. Not from an egoic perspective, but because this is how much that information is being spread forward. And that we will create this reality. Enough of us can see it, right? You see it.
Yes.
I see it with my mind's eye. Just because it's not physically present at the moment doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Mm. Oh, I'd like to just talk a little bit about that, because also the mind uses our 5 human senses. The consciousness uses our inner senses. It develops inner eyes, inner ears, inner knowing, inner seeing, inner everything, feeling. It's 2 different ones, but it's so magical when you are able to make that for the first time and you come out, you're like, oh my God, you were talking about colors. And I'm like, yes, I even say that. It's like going from living in black and white into living in rich, vibrant technicolor. That's how powerful this change in perspective, or come from, whatever you want to call it, the consciousness, and then letting the mind be the tool of your consciousness. It's just so much more profound, miraculous. Every day is a different day. I mean, you do have to let go of your ego and identity, right?
Yeah.
Something we do.
Let go of our attachments to how we think things should be.
Yeah.
That's a really hard part, is the attachment part. Yeah.
Yes. And laughing. Like, I'm like, you really have a sense of humor, and I'm just going to laugh at that. I don't know why this didn't turn out like the way I thought it was, but I know you got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see why when it's, all over, or, usually it's the next week I see that's why.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because, yes, I've been saying that for years, that spirit's got a sense of humor.
For sure.
It doesn't always feel like it at first, and afterwards you're like, oh yeah, that was pretty funny. Just took me a while to figure that out. It doesn't always feel like it in the beginning. It's like sarcasm, right? Sarcasm, sense of humor.
Yeah, and I think the more fun you have with them on their playing with you, is the things happen or evolve faster. They like it. They like you to have a sense of humor and to have fun and have a levity about what's going on. And the only way you can have a levity about what's going on the planet and all the pain and the suffering is to have a different come from, to know why it's happening, and to have this different perspective of consciousness. Yeah. And then it's fun.
Well, and all that suffering ultimately is intended to wake up our hearts, right? To bring us back to the heart of compassion, which is what we really are. We are all compassionate by nature. And so the suffering does serve a purpose. And once we understand it serves a purpose, then we don't have to sit in it anymore. Yes. So right now what we're experiencing is a collective suffering, so that we can learn through it, so that we don't have to repeat it. Yeah.
Very profound what you just said. Well said. Well brought out.
It has been such a pleasure meeting you. You and I could talk for hours or days, but it has been an hour, so it is time to let you go. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you and find your book?
Oh, that's great. Okay, so is it okay to show a picture of my book?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's Divine Trust. That picture is in my front yard. I took it one day when I was taking my getting ready to go to the doctor for either my back or my something else. So it's like 6 a.m, sun was rising, and you can find it on either divinetrustbook.com, where I have 5 free gifts for your listeners if they buy the book, or they can find me if they want to work with me at trustthedivine.com. So either or. Victoria, this has been an honor, a pleasure. I've enjoyed myself. I can't believe an hour just went by. It was so fantastic. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you came across my path. And as I was saying before we went on camera, I'm very particular about who I invite on the show. I want to be able to have these kinds of conversations. And my guests love these conversations. I get emails from people that say, I need more of those. And so I my viewers, I know, will love what we've talked about here, and I'm sure we will be meeting again.
Oh, I would love that. And thank you so much. You're awesome. I loved it. And what a beautiful bright light you are. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you for being here. And for all of you who are watching today, thank you for being here. And as I always say, remember to hold your light so high others can't help but see their own light. Together, we are creating a world of peace, love, harmony, prosperity, and freedom for all life on earth. And as always, get bold, be fearless, and live free.